This is a new Mazda, but a very different one. It's called the 6e, and in 2026, it's actually essentially going to replace the Mazda 6. Now, that Mazda 6 was once a very popular mid-sized family car, but it has been swamped by the SUV invasion. With this car, Mazda is fighting back with a twist. Well, actually, there are a couple of twists. The first is there is no engine. As the name alludes to, the 6e is fully electric. Mazda's first serious EV, you could argue. The second is that the 6e is made in China as part of a joint venture with Chang'an, one of China's car-making giants. Now, we don't get the Chang'an brand in Australia, but we do get one of the other Chang'an brands, Deepal. Beneath the skin, this car is largely shared with the Deepal L07, another mid-sized electric sedan that's already on sale in China. That car shares plenty with the Deepal S07, an SUV that arrived in Australia in 2025. Now, despite all that sharing of DNA, Mazda's done a pretty good job of making it look like a Mazda, starting with a whole bunch of the extras, the plastic strips and attention to detail with things like chrome and metal add-ons and so on. It all looks very distinctive and quite different to the Deepal. Similarly, the grille, obviously very unique Mazda. That said, it's got no air intakes there. It doesn't need nearly as much air to cool the thing down. And the lights, both front and rear, really help it fit into the Mazda family. And that Mazda-ness also translates to the cabin. The first thing you noticed in here is how upmarket it is. From the finishes, the materials, the nice sort of silver strips across the dash, even this suede-like material. And of course, you get some Mazda badges on the side of the instrument cowling and down here. So it sort of, I guess, Mazda-fies it a little bit. There is one area though that it's a little bit different. There are almost no buttons and dials. This car has, I guess, the basics, but you haven't even got a start button. You get in, once your bum's on the seat, it sort of detects that you're ready to go. You've got this giant central infotainment screen in the center here, and everything pretty much is done from that. So you want to adjust the ventilation, you want to adjust the climate control, you want to change the infotainment, you're having to delve into menus and so on here. So it's sort of caught that EV tech bug. I'm not entirely convinced that's the best way to go. Like a lot of EVs, the space utilization is pretty good in the 6e. You got a flat floor in the back, so decent space for your feet, and also heaps of knee room, so that works pretty well. You do notice though that the floor's relatively high, so my knees are actually quite high up. Still, it's reasonable, and headroom, okay, nothing special, but again, it's a mid-sized sedan. Decent space in the back for luggage, and you've also got a nice big cavity up front under the bonnet, a frunk if you like. But this is the bit I'm really interested in with the 6e, is how it drives, because let's face it, Mazda has been a cut above a lot of its competition in terms of the way the car drives, particularly for a mainstream car. So let's hit the road and see how it goes. Now, being a left-hand drive car, obviously we can't drive this on public roads, so I'm here at what was the former Holden proving ground with a couple of hours to myself to be able to experience it and see just how good or otherwise this car is. Now, this car I'm in, it's obviously not an Australian spec car, it's a German spec car. It's a single motor, rear wheel drive. We're looking at 190 kilowatts of power to the rear. This one has a very slightly different battery pack to what we're going to get in Australia. The one we're going to get is a 78 kilowatt hour lithium ferrous phosphate, so that LFP battery chemistry. Mazda hasn't announced the range yet, other than to say it will be more than 500 kilometres, so decent in terms of all electric range. Now, with 190 kilowatts, it's not overloaded with power, but it certainly has enough. Anyone stepping out of a Mazda 6, I think will find this absolutely fine in terms of performance. What I would say is that it doesn't feel quite as sharp as some Mazdas recently. It is very comfortable. It's certainly, from a ride quality perspective, is pretty good. And the body control is actually pretty good as well. It actually does a decent job of settling things and keeping fairly supple. It's certainly set up more for comfort than driving excitement. And in many ways, maybe that's a good thing, because it is definitely comfortable. And it is ultimately very capable. This thing's running on 19-inch tyres, and they're Michelin tyres. They've got plenty of grip, so when you pile into a corner, it actually hangs on pretty nicely. There's certainly depth there to the way it settles into a bend, and it's interesting. You can play around with it mid-corner and feed on some power, and it's having, I guess, the front wheel's doing only the steering and the rear's doing the driving. It separates it nicely. You can also muck around with some different driving modes. So I've got comfort mode or sport mode. I can also customize things and go in and adjust mainly things like regenerative braking and power mode. So again, that throttle response and the steering. So sort of set it up to exactly what I want. Of course, one of the huge unknowns with this car is how much it's going to cost. Mazda's not saying, except to say that they will have a start price below $55,000. Now, crucially, that makes it more affordable than the Tesla Model 3, which is sort of the, I guess, the benchmark in that mid-sized electric SUV category. So if they can get it in for that sort of price, you'd imagine it'll be a fairly tempting bit of gear. The 6e is due in Australia in 2026. In some ways, it can't come soon enough. Mazda has not been selling the Mazda 6 now for a while. To get a car back into that segment, a segment that Mazda's been very strong in previously, will obviously be a huge advantage. Now, quality has long been a Mazda hallmark. The way they hang together, but also the way they're put together and the fit and finish and so on. From a fit and finish perspective, this car seems to tick a lot of boxes. It is really impressively done. Of course, the big question mark for a lot of people, is it going to hang together? There'll be some that will no doubt have some concerns potentially about buying a Chinese car, and particularly one with a Mazda badge on it. But that said, everything I'm seeing here is pretty impressive. There is the occasional hiccup. For instance, some wind noise occasionally kicking off this driver's window. And I've also had the occasional buzz from the dash here, but generally it's pretty good. Again, it's not the quickest EV out there. It's not the most agile EV out there, but it sort of finds a nice middle ground in there somewhere. And there's one other pretty important thing here, is that I think anyone stepping out of a Mazda 6 getting into this, there'll be enough familiarity there, but also there's enough of that modern, enough of that sort of future, and the way the EV drives is great. Certainly performance-wise, certainly steps it up from your regular garden variety Mazda 6s. I can't in any universe imagine the 6e being a super hot seller, but mainly because the market has moved on so much in recent years, obviously gone so SUV heavy. But I would argue that this thing is one of the most important Mazdas in recent years, because it lays the foundation for a new breed of electric cars that really need to, I guess, fast-track Mazda into that electric space. It's very impressive in a lot of ways, the attention to detail and so on, the way it drives, it's quite comfortable. It's maybe not as Japanese as we've come to expect from recent Mazdas, but maybe it doesn't need to be. The market, again, is moving so quickly.